After 25 years behind the decks, I've learned that every DJ has a unique path. I'm DJ Deckard. I'm launching A DJ's Journey, a podcast that explores the stories behind the music with the DJs who shaped our scene. Some DJs play the crowd. Donald Glaude takes them to church, then into the dirt. 35 years of raving and 4 decks of beautiful chaos. This is Donald Glaude. Welcome to A DJ's Journey, where every beat tells a story. All right, welcome to another episode of A DJ's Journey. I'm your host, Deckard. I am honored and thrilled to have my fellow hometown resident, Donald Glaude.
Hey, what's up?
Nice to have you on board.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. All right, we're just going to dive right in. So, Donald, tell me about what music was like in your household when you were a kid. When did you first really notice music?
I noticed music, I don't know, gosh, when I was a small little kid. I mean, my parents didn't really play a lot of it. I mean, my father um, was from Louisiana. He played a lot of Zydeco in the house, but I'm the one that found my own journey this way. Listening to the radio, and then I started collecting records like when I was 6 years old, 7 years old. So, and then I did that all through, I guess, until now.
Were you collecting them at like garage sales, or were you actually going to
No,
music
I was
stores?
going out and I
Aaron,
was I'd spend my allowance on records. So that's me. And then I
what
spend
do
my
you?
lunch money on records. That kind of
what
yes. So I would just save it
what
up and spend it on that, you know.
what
My mother would
record or
take me.
records do you remember first
My
coming to your
first
attention?
record I bought was actually was a Beatles record called Rubber Soul. And there was a drugstore next door to a house I lived in Lakewood, Washington. We lived there just for a year. We were military brats before I moved into the house in Lakewood. That actually it was Lake City that house was in that we only lived in for a year, and they're all right next to each other. And then we moved to Lakewood after that. But yeah, there was a drugstore next door to our house, and I bought the Rubber Soul record, and then the next record I bought after that, I think, was a Prince record. So, but and then it was his first album, and then I don't know, I just started buying records. So that was it.
Were your parents into music as well, or like did was it a musical household?
Well, not really. No, I mean, my dad was, like I said, in Zydeco, and then or whatnot. But it wasn't played a lot. I was the one playing the music, I guess. So, and I
Yeah.
really got into like all sorts of different things. So there's, from a lot of
What-
fusion jazz to a lot of funk. That's what I kind of first started off with, and all the rock that I was used to hearing, on the radio and just around in general. So, I mean, Washington's a great place, especially at that time to grow up in, because it was very, I felt like it was on its way to being very eclectic. So musically as well as people wise as well. So it was a good place for me to grow.
And at what point? And I have to ask. In my household, we had one of those like really big console stereos, like
Yeah, we did too. Yeah, it's in the
yeah,
middle. Yeah.
yeah, in the middle, and you
In the living room, it was wood, and it looked like a piece of furniture,
right,
right?
right, right,
And
yeah.
you'd have to have the lid.
You could stack the records on it even, so it would
Oh
like it was
yeah, I used
yeah.
to play with that. And I'd get in trouble that I had to go get my own, you know, uh, phonograph, record player, whatever you want to say. And
At what point did you go from buying records to when did you make the leap, I guess, to actually get DJing coming to your
well, I don't
attention?
know. I mean, at first it was just like a thing I like to do, to share music with other people. So I just, I would do that a lot. I would record tapes, and I would just pause mixtapes together before I even knew there was, DJing out there. But this was like when I was still adolescent, and and before I even knew that you could mix, there was mixers. I found that a tiny bit later, when I was like, you know, a teenager, young one. And then once I found out that was going on, I um, went out and bought, uh, another turntable from the pawn shop and a Radio Shack mixer from Radio Shack, and I had one belt driven turntable and one that was not belt driven when I learned how to mix. So that's how I learned how to mix. So I think that was the best thing. I think the best thing to do, especially back then, was to learn on something cheap. To learn on something that isn't perfect. Because if you can do it on there, you can do it anywhere. So yeah, I remember this banging my head on the wall for 3 months, and then I did. My first mix was close to the edit, and that's the way I like it. The Dead or Alive, they covered
Yeah.
they covered it. Uh, the Casey and the Sunshine Band one. So that was my first mix.
And
Yeah.
close to the edit, Art of Noise, right?
Keep that, keep that, keep that, keep that, keep that right over. Yep.
I don't.
So
I don't think
remember,
the current generation probably has no idea how
well, that's the whole thing.
influential.
And it's because
Radio
I was.
Shack was.
Oh, I know. Radio Shack was it. That was the internet back in the day, was Radio Shack. You know what I mean? Like all the weird adapters and things that it had. Like all the MacGyver shit it had in there. Yeah, it was cool. So that was the thing for me. And then I even DJ'd school dances with that stuff. Until my mother was nice enough to buy me 1200s and a nicer mixer and then I was doing weddings, and because I was kind of taught you got to work. So yeah, that was what I did. I mean, I created my own thing, and I guess that's what I've been doing most of my life. Besides, me working, at the record store or 2 record stores, 3 actually in my time.
Well,
It was
okay.
it was
Before.
it,
Well,
well,
hold on. I
it
want.
was Tower. Hold on, it was Tower
Okay.
Records first, and then that was cool until that wasn't cool, and then and then and that wasn't they actually weren't my first choice, but I did well there. I think I made some people nervous. And then but I got let go from there, which was perfect because then I got hired at the store I was at for like 7-8 years, Penny Lane Records, and I ordered records for them and did a lot there. So that was a really big part of my life for a while. That was right before I started getting noticed by like Seattle and other places. It was it might not have been 7 years, but I mean, and I worked there maybe 6-7 years. God, I can't quite remember. But yeah, but maybe in the middle of those 6-7 years, Seattle started recognizing me, and before that, I was just doing Brews cruises and house parties and some stuff in Tacoma, my hometown, at a couple of little small clubs and whatnot. But I was I was there working at the store and doing these odds and end things in Lakewood. And then my friend Sean hit me up and said, Randy Slager just quit the underground or wanted to quit, and they needed a DJ. And that's what happened. So I went up there, and then that's when I was at the underground, and things kind of blew up for me. Um, we were the biggest club for a while, like lines around the block and whatnot. I don't know if you did your research on the underground or not, but in Seattle.
Well, and I did want. I
And I
wanted
was
to ask
like, I
you.
was playing all the old house music stuff, all the 90s stuff, all the early 2000s, all that stuff. I played 8 hours there at a Friday night. Every Friday night, it was 8 hours.
That's a hell of a residency.
I know.
So that
It was good. It was a good learning
and that
experience. I
time.
tell you.
So I assume you moved from Tacoma up to Seattle somewhere in that
Nope, I
range.
stayed in Tacoma the
Oh, you
whole.
stayed in Tacoma.
I've
Okay.
never lived in Seattle, but I
Okay.
claim Seattle as the hometown because, especially at that time, nobody knew where Tacoma was really, and
Right.
I
Right.
played a lot in Seattle. So yeah.
Right. Well, and by the time, so I didn't, I went to college at Washington State, 92, and I was not a club kid. Boy, So I graduated when I was 22. So I actually didn't start DJing and going to clubs almost until I was like late 20s.
Okay.
So my exposure to you, and I guess I'm curious, maybe you could tell me some more about it. The Seattle Underground during the 90s. And Dan, DJ Dan, rest in peace, he spoke of being obsessed with Randy Slager at the
Yeah, he
monastery.
was.
And then he
I
moved
wasn't.
to the underground. And then you started after Randy left at the underground, which is what you were just saying, right? So
Right. Yes.
can we go back in time into that kind of early 90s, like
Sure.
grunge is
I
happening?
took them into the dirt. That's what I did. Into the fucking dirt. And they
Tell me
loved it.
more.
They
Tell
loved
me.
it. I just took them into the dirt. They didn't know. I didn't know what to do. What to expect. I just did what I would do at home. And they didn't know what to expect. But it worked. And I do think my numbers were higher than his, Randy's. So it is what it is. But I wasn't trying for anything. That's the whole thing. I didn't know what to expect. No, so no expectations, right? Making $150 for playing or something, for playing 8 hours, some shit.
You do it for the
Kind of
passion, right?
yeah. Oh, son, and spending every cent I had on vinyl, every cent. So, so, yeah, it was an amazing experience because I really got to mold that place, dude. I had it, mold it. So and I would I was kind of a dick. I would, I wasn't a dick, but I would show up kinda late sometimes to build up a little anticipation, and then I would just play for, like, 8 hours, and we had, like, different sections of it split up, so we'd have, like, I don't know, we have the sexual hour, and I would nothing, everything in that hour would have to do with sex, I would play. I had 8 hours, and then I
Yeah.
would go to, some faster stuff and and some industrial stuff. I went all, but it was nice to have that kind of time at the time to be able to go through all sorts of different genres and and at the the public was loving it. I don't know why or what, but I did my own shit, and it kinda bothered some people, but I guess that's kinda how I am, and still I am to this day, so it is what it is.
well, well, that,
It was
that
a lot
does.
of fun, though, and
I
people
think
people
that
are
I think that
losing their
fits
shit. It was fun.
the Seattle. And I would just compare to say, I DJ'd my first few years in Seattle, and I think compared to say San Francisco, where there's just a ton of genres down here. You can
Yes.
find it old, new. If
Right.
you want new house and young kid, Seattle, it's a little more. I don't know how you would describe it. My experience, I would say it was just a little more. It was a smaller club scene. It was more focused
I
and,
think it's
and
smaller,
younger.
and I think it's separated, which is not always good, kind of separated a tiny bit, you know what I mean? Like, not like San Francisco, I feel like, of course, it's separated sometimes amongst genres, but I do feel like they, for the most part, especially now again that they're talking to each other, and I don't know, it's hard to explain.
So
I love Seattle because there was a lot of talented DJs, and it made me a better DJ, right? Because they keep always kept me on point, you know, for the most part. So that was really good. And it is smaller. It's way smaller than the Frisco scene if you're gonna really look at it as overall, don't you think?
yeah, well, and it felt to me like, when I first started going into the DJ scene, which wasn't until around '99. So some of the clubs or names, I was familiar that to me, you seemed like a big fish in a small pond. That was kind of the way I saw it. And then by the time I started DJing out, you were playing. I think by that time you were playing. You would play at the Showbox every once in a while,
Yeah,
which
yes,
for
yes.
people who don't know, that was
I love that place, man. Yeah,
a lot of concerts there, a lot of
yeah,
rock shows, alternative
yeah.
shows,
I like that
and then they
energy.
would sometimes do club shows, and then they would
Yeah,
always
yeah.
close at like 1:45. Do the whole
Yep.
last call, get out of here. San
Right.
Francisco clubs were going till
Yeah,
like
I
4,
opened for
4:30.
I have opened for Daft Punk there. Yeah, on their first tour when they were
Oh,
doing. Yeah, when they were just rolled up and they're like, their shit and their little like motorcycle helmets on that weren't like. No, I don't even know if they. I don't even think they had them on. I'm not sure. I'm gonna have to like.
Pre robot
Yeah,
era, probably.
yeah.
Huh?
I'll have to double check. But I do
So
I do remember opening for them and seeing their all their 909 setup and all that shit. Yeah, it was really cool.
So
Seeing somebody
what
have it
was that
before you.
like as you were starting to kind of, I guess, ascend, in as far as, your local cloud? At what point did you start getting noticed outside of Tacoma, Seattle area and start, traveling for gigs?
Um, Still lived in Tacoma. I lived in Tacoma still. I don't remember exactly when. I was hesitant, so I waited for like a year or so before I was getting hit up for like a year. I did not. uh, Um, I didn't go to like a year after I really started getting hit up, and I can't remember when that was. I was Josh, so he would remember because he was around there, and Josh Donaldson, if you guys know who he is or not, but it was a long time ago. I'll tell you that. But it was interesting. I finally gave in to Dan hooked me up with what was it? God, I can't remember the fucking show. Grape Ape 2, I think it was. And after that, LA was going nuts. And then he hooked me up with the fucking Techno Trap guys. And then that's how all that happened. It was through Dan. He did repay, whatever he thought he needed to repay me for, showing him
Well,
records and
Well, and
just
let me interrupt there to give you this is what Dan told me
okay.
on this podcast. So and just to go back and just I know that I chatted with you about it, but Dan was really instrumental, and he was the first person that said yes to me about doing interviews for this podcast, and
Oh
and
wow,
he
okay.
he not only said yes, but he looked at me very earnestly and he said yes, and there was a pause, and he goes, "I have a lot to say."
Oh gosh. Yeah.
I'm going to read this to you because you said you were playing at the Underground, and you set aside a half an hour for him to DJ. He said he was so
I
nervous.
told you that story.
Yeah, he said he was so nervous and his hands were shaking that the record skipped. And he said you came over and you grabbed the mic and you said, "Give it up for DJ Dan. He's an amazing DJ and he's a star now." And he said in that moment, the crowd cheers. And he said it just actually kind of settled him to get, he's like, "You got this," got me motivated. And he said it motivated him but to be perfect, or as perfect as you can be.
Yeah,
What,
right.
what do you remember? What do you remember from that night?
I remember that. Yeah, I remember it skipped. I thought either it skipped or he picked up the wrong record. I can't remember which one it is. I'm gonna stick with my version. Is that I thought he picked up the wrong needle on the wrong record, which is very. It's easy to do when you're like scared, right? Or not
Yeah.
scared, but just like
Nervous.
frazzled, nervous. Yes, exactly. But then and it might have been a skip, whatever it was. It doesn't really matter. Yeah, but I did say whatever I said. I don't remember all what verbatim what I said, but I did. It's like nothing. It's all good. You know, just keep going. We all make mistakes. Sometimes the mistakes are the beauty. So I mean, look at that. Now he has something. There's a big story to remember, and people got cheered, and his name got announced, and now people kind of, that's the start, right?
How
If
did
he
how
wouldn't
did
have done
you
that, maybe I wouldn't have said, "This is DJ Dan," and this is, like made a big
right?
deal about it.
Well, it turns it into a memorable story.
Yes, at
and
least.
and it actually
That we're
and
still talking about.
it also says something about you that in that moment, rather than either just let it go, let him figure it out, you leaned in to also give him a little bit of grace and allow a connection with the crowd and Dan in that
Yeah, of
moment.
course. Yeah, yeah. Oh, well, yeah. I mean, of course. I mean, that was his moment and his deal. And I didn't want to, he was excited, and I didn't want to ruin it for him. And it all worked out really well. And I ended up with a great friend through, out of that whole thing. So that's amazing.
And going back to something you said, so you said you were starting to get offers, I guess, but you said it took you about a year. So What was
Yeah.
going on in that time?
I
Were
was
you
I was just I know somebody just asked me this recently, and with Josh there, because Josh, kind of wished, he thinks that if I would have went in a little earlier, it might have changed the trajectory of my career to some other level, which it could have. Um, and but I was more nervous about how it was going to change my life. So I knew once I left or started doing that, it was going to change my life some way. You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
I'm saying that same thing at the age of 56 now.
Yeah.
because in the last year I've gone DJ full time, and with
Yeah.
everything,
Right.
private
Yeah.
parties, corporate, if someone
Okay.
asks me to
Good.
do
Good.
it,
Yeah.
yeah, but it's mentally that is a big shift. Yeah.
Yeah. It is. Yeah. Because then you have to look at what's going to potentially change your, in your lifestyle and family and, everything. So
So in that year,
I had kids already.
did
So,
you come to did you come to an internal acceptance of, at least
it came to
what
the
you thought?
eternal acceptance that it was the only thing left for me to do. Yes. I mean, or, I had to do it. So I knew I was going to do it. Just wasn't sure if I was ready for it or, or what. So,
And as you started going down that path, how well would you say it was everything you imagined more?
it was, yeah, way more. I've learned a lot, and, especially if you're going to stay in something for as long as I have, there's going to be ups and downs. So it is what it is. I'm on an upswing and upswinging as hard as I can. So keep a lookout. But yeah, just putting out a lot of music right now and just trying to, after the pandemic, I told myself, not to take all this for granted, anymore, and to try to remember why I got into all this in the first place, and what I loved about it, and love about DJing, and stick with that, and not worry so much about all these other things. So yeah.
Did you have a
So
time where you felt maybe you did take it for granted?
got pretty close sometimes. Yeah, yeah. I've been doing it for like what, over 30 years. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. I think around 35, something like that.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so, and I want to go back to, so that's amazing to me that fairly early on, you were already playing 8-hour sets, which,
Yeah.
um, and thinking about it in terms of, themes and arcs and all that. I guess I'm just curious too, when you started taking, those gigs, like start traveling, by that time, you could already play variety also. I mean,
Yes, that was my whole
obviously, but
thing. I was really good at playing variety back then. I'm trying to get to that to that to uh, that point again now. So, which I'm
playing
pretty close. So
playing
right
more
now I'm
variety.
playing 3 hour. I'm doing these 3 hour stints here and there, like I did when at Joshua Tree, and it was a cold start, I call it. So no opening DJ. You start and you finish. I've done it for them twice, or I've done the 3 hour thing for them twice. I've done it for a couple other things as well. And that's what I want to do for my tour is a 3 hours stint. So I would start from start to finish. It would just be me. So, and then I would
Nice.
go through a history. So I would even start probably with my first mix I've ever did and just kind of go through a history of time and going up from then to now.
And did you find I guess in your own musical journey, and so when you started getting synced up with like Funky Techno Tribe, did you find you just did your own thing?
Well, the thing
Did
was,
you
you have to find there's like, 6 or 7 DJs or whatever. And at that time, when I first started with them, it was always a one room thing. So, you'd have to find your niche, you find your spot, your thing, because there was a lot of overlapping tracks, from DJs like me, Dan, and Spun sometimes, or me, or me, Dan, and Spun, or me, Dan, and Tony. I mean, depending on if I was going to play some breaks or not, right? It would be Spun. Or so you have to worry about not playing the same songs, just out of respect that everybody else is playing, right? So when I first started playing with the Funky Techno Tribe, I did a lot of B-sides and a lot of this weird like stuff I knew that they were going to play. I know
right?
Dan pretty well, so I would try to stay away from. He was pretty easy to know what to stay away from. The rest of the guys, I didn't know as well. So I would just try to find all these weird like tracks. I would play tracks on 45 that weren't supposed to be on 45. They were on 33 and vice versa. I would do just different things. Played drum and bass records on the wrong speed. Did a lot of that. Just to have tracks that people didn't have that they weren't going to play. You know what I mean? And then I started to really get in the groove of finding records and stuff that other people didn't have. So
And at what point did you also start using multiple decks, not just 2 decks, but 3 or even 4 decks?
Gosh,
Was
whenever
that
it was
just
in front of my
that
face, but
was that just a
it was
natural
early
was that a
2000s.
natural extension
Yeah.
of that style of just of liking variety and keeping it fresh for yourself?
Yes. Yeah. Right. And then now I use 3 or 4, decks, CDJ. So that's just the same thing I'm doing now. Just because I don't always like to play with other people. Dan was like one of the people I didn't mind playing with. Um, but even playing with each other, sometimes it could get a little crazy. But it can be fun. You want it to be fun and want it to be something that hopefully you learn from, and it's just you can build on, because you're like, oh, I got this track. Oh, I got this, kind of thing. That's a lot of fun, right?
Right.
And and we had a lot of fun doing that at times. Um, but now I can play on 4 decks, and I don't have to have another person playing with me to do the things that I want to do and the layering and that kind of thing. It's really nice. But yeah, the three deck 3 turntable thing. I was probably in the 2000s or something, early, and I did it off and on, and sometimes I was pretty good at it. I mean, the best person I've seen do vinyl on 3 decks was Carl Cox. So I
Yeah.
thought, yeah,
Yeah.
so,
Well, and
yeah.
I've heard you and if you're going to be compared to
But I was
somebody
okay. But he
that's
was
not a
good.
bad
He
yeah,
he amazed me a few times. Yeah, yeah. So,
Yeah.
and I'm
And
hardly amazed. I'm gonna tell you that right
and I was going to mention I didn't mention this to you before. I did mention that you came up, and obviously Dan brought you up, and
now.
he's told me just when he and I were chatting lots of stories. But you also did come up with the first 3 episodes actually. Wes Smith mentioned you again, part of the
Okay.
Seattle scene, and Kelly Reverb. He's mentioned you multiple times, and he
He's
mentioned
a great dude.
your style is like a spectacle.
Yeah, it
Like
is. It is. He nailed it. Wow, I'm pretty impressed. Yeah, it is. It is. It is. It is perpetual chaos, but it's good. Beautiful. But yeah.
uh, and then my research, and you and I chatted about it a little bit, but so you were in Vegas really before the current wave, which as far as I think what we would say is kind of an EDM or a post EDM
Right. Yeah. Right. Yeah,
Vegas
post
trend.
EDM. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
so you were, and you and I talked about Dre's a little bit, which is is before it became like Dre's sort of a super club. It was this
It was
more
Dre's, the freaking underground, the dirty underground. I had so much
the
fun there.
dirty underground, super fun
It
on
was
in a
so much fun. Oh
small
my god.
off strip. Wasn't like in a big casino or
Off
anything like
script,
that.
yeah, it was amazing. It was like I had so much fun then. Like it's so much
So
fun there.
tell me about your Thank God It's Friday residency, and I think you mentioned 2 clubs. One of them was Ice, and what was the other one?
Yeah, yeah. Well, my residencies, I had kind of an unsaid residency as this club called, or this, it was Utopia, and then which all the old school Vegas heads know about, and if you don't know it, you should look it up. It's legendary. And then and I did that off and on. That was a lot of fun. God. And then after that, but that was an official, like an official thing, like Ice was, and still, I guess, like we were talking about earlier. It was and I was surprised to hear that recently that I was the first out of resident DJ to come in and do that, that kind of that thing that's been going, like we were talking about, all the residencies they've been doing since, from Tiesto to Diplo, like Tiesto would
Yeah.
come to our club and play, and I was a resident and he'd come play, a couple times. He played a couple times, that year because my residency only lasted a year. He played there a couple times and whatnot. But yeah, I was before all those guys. Yeah. So it's interesting.
And there was also a short-lived Spike TV show called The Club.
Yes, that's called The Club. That was about that. It was about ice. Yes. Yeah.
What?
And Dan was on it for
Yeah.
one episode. Yeah.
What did the cameras catch that was never shown?
I don't know. I was pretty good by hiding away. but Vegas is a dirty mistress. Oh God.
Well, what was that? I mean, I know the TV in Hollywood, all that. It's a very different, obviously, than the club world. No cameras are on. What was that like being part of that? I guess
it
that
was
production.
weird. It was weird. I was hesitant to do it. It was weird. Luckily, I wasn't the focus so much, right? As the club itself being the focus, or I probably wouldn't have done it. and it was okay. It was kind of cheap. It was cool. It was cool. At the first part of that residency, I had such a good time. The last 3 months of that residency was hell. And it's
why?
just because
Victim-
it's a residency. Things get tired, right?
Yeah.
We were doing it. Excuse me. I was there I think it was Fridays or whatever it was. So it was 3 weekends out of 4 or 5, depending on what the month had. Or actually no, I was there. I only got, let's put it this way, I only got 1 weekend off.
Right.
Eventually, people get worn out. Like worn out. I got worn out. Drank way too much. Got involved in all that Vegas drama. Love you, Vegas, but damn. I love you. Don't get me wrong. I love DJing there, but it was rough. And the last part of it, but got through it, and that helped buy my house and some other stuff. So thank God. So I don't have it anymore, but, but it was my first house. So,
how do you feel about or how did you feel about it when the EDM wave hit? Like, did you see how?
I had mixed feelings, and all I know is that I knew that I had to. There's nothing I could do about it. Does that make sense? I had to figure out how I was going to ride the right wave or not. I wrote it differently than Dan did. I mean, because I came from a DJ standpoint of like I came from a DJ standpoint of where I've already had DJ just for like weddings and people's people's entertainments. That's my first concern usually still is entertaining the dance floor and making sure people have a good time. So I was and I was able to make the switch kind of right. It wasn't didn't make me happy, I was very proud of Dan for sticking to his guns because it was a hard one, right? Like it was very not what we were doing. Does that make sense?
Right.
Like
Yeah. Well, and let me add another question to it. Around that, I guess in that same kind of time frame, it was I don't know, from my recollection, I know electro felt really big in like 2006, and then probably the EDM kind of, so maybe in 2008. Also around that.
Right.
Yeah, it was a kind of a little bit of a delay there. There was like a beautiful sweet spot where there was all this great electro music. But this is
amazing,
also
right? Like I was,
yeah.
I thought, oh my God,
it was amazing. Yeah. And actually, it was funny because when Afro House started getting popular last year, I'm not even kidding. The first thing I thought to myself was, if Afro House is coming now, what's coming later is darker tribal, and then what's coming after that is electro again.
Yeah, well, I think the electro is already starting to come.
Yeah, I've been noticing it. Yeah, this year quite a bit.
Which is cool, man. But yeah,
Yeah, and it just kind of follows those cycles.
Yeah.
Plump DJs were talking about that with Breakbeat too. Lee was
Oh,
talking
Braveby's good. Fuck, dude, right
he,
now. Oh my
yeah,
god.
he was talking about like 20-year cycles and they're having an anniversary of their Plump Night Out, and so he said
Yeah.
it's interesting how the crowds are different. They're younger, yet
Yeah. Yeah.
and they're
That's
more
what you
and they're
want.
more
Yeah.
and they're more daytime than nighttime, but you still can get
It's
that
a
same
trip.
energy.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
don't mind all that daytime stuff. Or earlier stuff. I mean,
yeah.
I still like my late night stuff, but
Well,
I don't mind the earlier stuff too, man. It's great. You know?
and were you I didn't get to this part in my research. Were you a record label owner as well?
Yeah, I own Eden Recordings. I
In
still do.
record. Okay, so I'm curious. Did you run into the same issue that has come up multiple times on these conversations? That kind of post 2005. In those earlier days, you could sell 5-10,000 vinyl or something and make
Oh yeah, we
real
were
money.
killing it at one point. Yeah,
Yeah.
we were
How did you adapt
pretty.
to all this? The post vinyl and Vegas, and then
All
leaving
that
the
stuff. I
Vegas.
think the record label just stopped. I mean, to be honest with you, um, it was a little bit of an adjustment. My adjustment for me was different than Dan's because Dan kind of stuck to his guns and didn't give too much to the EDM thing. I kind of gave to it. I had to make a living plus I had kids, that kind of thing. Um, I did okay. But at the end of it, when it started, like it was still a big thing, I guess. But towards the end of it, I don't even know when the end was. Then when do you think it was? 2016, 20. I mean,
I mean, it's still. I
it's
guess
still there, but I mean, like that
Yeah.
for okay, that might have just been when I got tired of it, right? So
Yeah, well, and I
you
see it
know
like
what I
things
mean?
like
I'm
things
really
like
tired of this. Like
like
I went.
EDC still happens in Wonderland and some of these festivals, and I feel like it's, I don't know, bifurcated or something, and like it still exists.
They're
Right.
trying. I'm playing a bunch for them now. I just did the old school room at EDC this May, and it was insane. It was amazing, packed, and we all like it was me, Steve Loria, bunch of old school LA and whatever DJs, and we all just did our thing, and yeah, it was packed.
Do
You
you
should look
think
it up.
and do you and do you
There's
think
going to be more of that. So
do you think that's like a different crowd that's kind of catching on to you?
There's
Like,
there's some of that. Yeah, there is. And I think there's a bunch of old schoolers coming out wanting to hear, they want to come out and they're coming and they're in their 50s and maybe even their 50s or 60s even and they're paying money to go to EDC, right? And they're in there as well. And then there's young kids there too. So it's a good diverse whatever. And I think it's good because I think they, the rave, there's a big comeback on the rave movement, just like the rave thing in general.
yeah.
I think they really want to know what r- was really like. You know what I mean? Nostalgia.
And you mentioned some of the names, and I mean, and this is quite illustrious crowd to be amongst here. But Dan mentioned, he called it the touring circuit, and he said it would often be himself, you, Fatboy Slim, Carl Cox, and
Yeah. Yeah.
like depending on whatever the festival or show, you could kind of reliably see you guys, and obviously
Yeah.
there's you have some things in common.
Yes.
You bring energy. You're obviously all great DJs, and I think probably adaptable to wherever the crowd
Right.
is. You're
Yeah.
gonna you're gonna
Yeah.
bring your own energy to it.
And I think that's very important as well. Yeah. Yeah. So, and he's right. Yeah. God, I miss playing playing with, especially, uh, I always will miss playing with Dan, but I was lucky enough to play with him right before all that happened. So that's good. But yeah, I miss playing with Carl. I would love to play with Carl again and Fatboy Slim. But there was that time period when I was doing it a decent amount. Yeah. So he's right.
You have any stories you can share about just with any of those guys?
Hmm. Let me think. What was I gonna say? Um, what was the dance story I was gonna say? Well, we talked about the dance story. One of them, there was the the him picking up the wrong record. That's what I'm gonna say. I'm almost positive that's what happened, but he might have photoshopped that one to sound like it skipped. In his brain, I'm not sure, but it could happen this way. That's one of the many stories. I'm trying to think of an appropriate story to tell you. Um,
I'll share one story from this year, and Dan, he and I were on the phone one night, and he had told me a
okay,
story.
was it another 2 hour conversation?
Well, yeah, probably,
Yes,
and
everyone I heard. I thought I was might have been. I didn't know. I didn't think I was the only one, but I didn't know he had so many 2 hour
no,
conversations
I
there.
mean, well, he had a what's the word? He could only tell it like it was.
Yeah,
He always just made it sound like, hey, it's two guys who love music.
and
Like
it
I did
was.
your
Yeah,
show. I did your show because you sound like you had an interesting perspective and you had a vision for it. And I was nervous as hell to share a song idea that I had been working on. And
right.
I just remember he so set me at ease. I remember he looked at me and he just said, Keith, like, this is a good idea. Keep working on it. Like, you're a producer. If you can come up with an idea and turn it into a song, because that's what a producer is. Don't
Yeah,
overthink it. And don't make it bigger than it is. And I saw him doing that, kind of all the way through his life, on the way that
right.
he just told someone how he saw it. He didn't
Yeah,
have to sugarcoat it. He just saw it how he said it how he saw it.
yeah. He'd never sugarcoated much of anything, or he just wouldn't say anything. So he'd just ignore you. Like, okay, never mind. But he wouldn't lie to you. He wouldn't
No,
sugarcoat anything.
and in his own words, it would be something along the lines of the Queen tells it like it is.
Yeah, the Queen. Yep, yep.
um,
Oh
so
man.
and let me ask you as well. So you were parts of Funky Techno Tribe in L.A. and Seattle. You were parts of a lot of them. What's your relationship with Burning Man?
Um, I've been there 5 times. I had a great time when I went. I don't know if I ever do it again. I'm not saying I would or wouldn't. I haven't been there since 2018. I don't think.
Yeah,
Um, I love all the regional burns that uh, the
saw
Santa
you at
Cruz.
Unscrews in Santa Cruz. That was
Oh
great.
God, it was amazing. Oh,
Yeah.
so amazing. And then that one, and then always Love Burn on the other side in Florida. That's probably those two are my favorites.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Love Burn, I have not made it to yet, but
Oh, it's good.
it's been
It's good.
put on my
Yeah,
list.
it's good.
And
Yeah. Don't
Shambhala,
don't let
I
don't let the Miami thing fool you. It's good.
no, well, the fact that it's like right off, I mean, you can Uber your food there, Uber Eats your food
Yeah,
if you want.
yeah. It's
That's
pretty crazy. A lot of people
that's
don't
not
think
that's
you
not
can come and
suffering
go,
by
which is
Burning Man,
nice. You can come and go.
right?
And I remember the first time I went there, we rented a car, and we stayed off premise because you can go in and out, and we got tickets last minute, and I played a few places, and Dan was there, but I went with my girlfriend, Martini, and we drove there, and we parked in the wrong place, and they towed us. But the cool thing, they towed us to the right place parking lot. That's what kind of crap that would go on there. It was amazing, right? I was like, "What happened?" And then I thought my car got stolen, and then I'm like, I was all. It was weird. It was so funny,
This is the
but
nicest thieves ever.
yeah, right. That was part, put it to where we were supposed to be. I thought that was really cool. So it's a really, really cool event, And if I would say, if you haven't went, you should try to go there. So, and if you haven't been to the burn and you're, young and able, or in the right headspace, you should try the burn out at least once in your life too. I'm just saying
Yeah.
that to whoever's listening. So,
Yeah, well, and I absolutely, I 100% that, and but the regional burns are definitely you get a nice flavor of it without.
you really do, and
Yeah,
you have to deal with all the dirt or all the expected weather, and I think that's really cool. And I think at a lot of the regionals, the people that go to those are, it's a concentrated uh, amount of people that have already been to the burner a bunch of times, and they kind of have a good attitude and a good, they can teach you a lot if you haven't been, or
Is
that
it
kind of.
is it important to you on the DJ side to get a number, like you were just in San Francisco for Heavy Petting Zoo, another Burning Man camp
Oh,
had
that
a,
was amazing.
a
Okay, that was amazing, and that was one of the most amazing. Not just my experience playing on the float. I was giddy. I don't get giddy. It takes a lot for me to get like. I'm sorry, just how I've always been. I guess it was amazing playing on the float in a parade. Okay, whatever, but yeah, I found it to be exciting. And then the after hours that I played was even, it was way above what I expected, and the crowd response and everything was a really amazing thing as well. But the thing I want to really comment on is their 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 whole rave community that they have within the heavy penning uh, group that that help create it or help support it,
yeah.
and the other groups that they all come together to do heavy petty Z. I don't know if it's just heavy petty Z. They have other sanctions of people from
Yeah.
you know, and it's really cool to see the community there. It's amazing, and people could learn from that, like how they are so inclusive, like with all different walks of life. It's really cool.
And Dan had spoke also of that in the same way that you said it, like that kind of the post EDM time where all of a sudden
Yeah.
gigs were different and big DJ paydays were coming. And so he talked about that in both on the side of I rode that wave for a while, but then
Yeah.
he specifically mentioned I don't remember what year this was exactly. I think you and I were trying to kind of figure out what at what
Yeah,
point did it
right. When
feel
that,
like,
yeah,
hey, you know what, like maybe this isn't the train I want to be on anymore. And he
yeah, right.
mentioned
Yeah.
and he said, hey, my bank account took a bit of a hit, but I made a
Mine
conscious
did too.
choice.
Yeah.
Is I made a conscious choice that I wanted to be part of events that had
I'm
more of
sorry
a
about the ghetto
community.
bird.
No worries, no
Even
worries.
in San Diego, right? So, but yeah, but
But
go ahead.
but having being part of events and saying yes to events that maybe aren't as a big of a paycheck. Sorry, managers and agents out there, but had a the crowd and the energy and the vibe
Or the
that
crowd,
was
or
for
or the energy that you wanted to be around. Yeah.
yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, I mean, I took a hit financially as well, so, but luckily at the end of the day, I'm still here, and at that time, I think all the kids, all my kids are out of the house, or about out of the house. So that did help as well. So I might have done it sooner, but 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 yeah, but it's hard. It was a little bit hard, and then you see some certain people making a bunch of money, and I know it's not all about the money, but you have to sustain yourself, and you would get, it could be a little discouraging.
Yeah.
I know I went through a little bit of a depression. I mean, about it, but probably about that and some other shit, but I didn't want to admit to until later. So, but it is what
And
it is.
where do you find yourself in 2026 feeling about your DJing and production, and how
I
are
feel
you feeling about
amazing. I feel amazing about it. I don't care what anybody thinks, like I used to. That's great. Like for me, that's good. And I try not to get caught up into whatever. I just try to, the challenges are between me and me. Like I'm battling, myself. So at this point, so want to get out all this music I want to get out, and I want to, there's a few things I want, more than a few things I want to do before I, end up maybe switching professions or whatever. But I have no plan to do that anytime soon. So
all right, I
no
was going
matter
to
what,
ask,
no
but
matter what nobody ever, thinks whatever. I mean, I know I'm not young, but yeah, I'm not quitting.
when I
So
when I was talking to Fatboy Slim earlier this year, he said he felt like he had about 5 more years left.
okay,
And I
yeah,
think,
that makes sense.
yeah, I think I may be wrong, but I want to say he's early 60s, maybe 62,
Yeah,
something
I
like
know
that.
we were kind of close in age, but yeah, he's older
Yeah.
than I am. Yeah, I know
And
that.
he played I think over 200 gigs last year. It was like the most gigs he's
Yeah,
ever played
yeah,
a year. So
right.
I'm
And there's
like,
because there's this whole region, like this whole thing about people finally starting to maybe respect some of the old schooler, giving the old schoolers a chance. I'm not saying he's always been popular and he's the man, and
yeah.
and I've played with them, but you know what I'm saying. There's this resurgence, like not just in certain places. Like it seems like it's kind of happening all over. So
Right on.
which I'm excited about.
Okay, I'm gonna hit you up with a segment here called Crate Digging. I've got five titles from your past, and I would love it if you could just give me your thoughts or any anecdotes, any stories about it,
Okay.
and we'll just go. Soul Cha Cha.
I'm gonna redo that track.
You're gonna redo that track.
Yes, yes, yes. So you'll hear a new version of that soon. That's a plan of mine. Yes, I it's probably one of my more favorite tracks that I produced. To be honest with you,
And
Bohannon
why?
style,
What makes you want to redo it now?
because I think it's one of the few tracks that I did back then that makes sense to redo again. That could use a redo. I think it could do well even now. Yeah, it's done right.
To the Soul.
Damn. That's an old one.
I called it
Oh,
crate digging for a reason.
okay, okay. That one I probably won't redo again, but I remember making it, and it was a leading point to Soul Cha Cha. So yes, it's very so it has its own importance to me as well. So
Did you have a mentor for a producer?
no,
How did you take the steps into producing?
I just taught myself. I didn't have a mentor. No.
What gear did you first try out on?
Actually, I mean, no mentor, but I mean, the, the person that did help me understand using a computer and production on the computer was Anthony Moscatel. He lives in Seattle. He used to do some of the shows at the Showbox that you're talking about. He was involved with the Daft Punk one actually, and then before that I was in a band. I played bass, and this guy named Saul did a lot of programming. They weren't mentors per se, you know what I mean? But they did teach me a lot about how to use a computer, you know, because and to produce with one. So that makes any
Absorb,
sense. And then, but I taught myself.
shadowing. Yeah,
Yeah,
absorbing.
right. Yeah, yeah, absorbing exactly. But then I would drive probably most producers crazy because I don't use any of the shortcuts, and I got my own weird shortcuts. It's pretty ghetto, but it works. So, so that's why a lot of times I produce by myself, or I do something and then I send it to someone else, and then we could collaborate that way. So
Right.
go back.
All right. Get Up.
Yeah. Oh, I did that at oh, that's another one that I talked to someone that somebody else wanted to work on redoing it. So I might do something with a couple people on that as well. I'm not going to mention them yet. To redo Get Up, but I remember doing Get Up. I did it with Dave Audet, or Dave Audet was the engineer. I did it at Moonshine Studios, and we did it in about a day or two. Yeah, so it was fun. I
Mad Disco.
don't remember that. I knew
Don't
you were gonna
remember.
get one that I didn't remember. Fuck. Spelled with two D's, right?
2Ds. Yeah, yeah.
I remember that. Isn't that funny? I remember that, and I can see it, but I don't remember what it sounds like. Great song. It probably wasn't.
All right. Stick 'em.
Second, I have a remix of that I'm working on. I Yeah, that was great. We did that. We did that. over the phone, and with I can't remember who engineered it. That I don't know if I'm supposed to mention them, but so yeah, it was me, Dan, and a third. So I'll
Is
say
there?
it for now. Yeah, and then TJ's remix was really good too. I like that song a lot. It was really good for the time period, and it did. I think did it go to number one? It might have been one of my only actual number one tracks. 'Cause,
I didn't. You know what? And I'm gonna
I'm
post.
Beatport.
I'm gonna. Okay, I'm gonna post research and I'll add a tag if it went number one.
Yeah.
Everyone knows. And what was that? What was that like? Going into like collaborative. So as you're learning production yourself and then getting into a collaborative mode.
It's cool. I like doing it now a lot. Back then it was cool as well. I didn't know as much as I do now. I was a little stubborn. I could have went the route of always working with someone, but I guess I'm stubborn, and I guess I have a little bit of a, I don't know, ego, which isn't always good or bad, depending, right? But I went on the route of like trying to learn to do it all, and all myself. I think what happened with me is that pre-COVID, I couldn't really write, especially at that EDM period. I tried to force it, and it just wasn't happening. And then I think when I started to get better at it, I'm not saying even great. I'm not even super great now, but I am better um, at production during COVID. When I just decided to kind of let go of all the preconceived notions and kind of and just to do what I felt like I needed to do, production wise. What just make the music that came out of me instead of trying to always copy what was going on. If that makes any sense, trying to write a hit like that was a lot of it. You'd be talking to your agent or whatever, and they're like, "Oh, you need to write a hit. You need to write a hit, you need to write a hit," and all this pressure and the EDM thing, I guess, just wasn't. I mean, I could play it, I guess, but I just couldn't write it. So
Right.
now I feel a lot better about it because it just seems like it's right now. It's kind of the wild, wild west. You can do house, you can do '90s house, you can do you know this or that or a lot of hybrids, combination of things. And it's exciting and I've definitely done better when I've just kind of done me. And it's not perfect and you know what I mean? And just being doing the music with I keep saying it, but with intent and putting it out even if it's not perfect, not nitpicking at it all the time and not, because that I used to have a lot of stuff that I would never put out because of that, like it would never make the light of day. So
Just because you
now
didn't, more because you didn't think it met like a quality bar, or it didn't sound
right, yeah,
authentic. Maybe.
yes, and sometimes the stuff I put out still doesn't quite meet a quality bar. I just think that's the only way that I'm gonna get better, right? Is putting stuff out there and putting myself out there. It's
Did,
just the way it is for me. But
did you ever have that? I'll ask the question, but a quick anecdote to it. So I thought this was interesting, in sometimes how DJs or producers, how they think of themselves, or how they're, maybe when you were thinking about trying to produce a song in that time frame, maybe it wasn't feeling like authentically you. And
right,
a friend of mine whose DJ name is Ding Dong, he talked
yeah,
about going to this gig, and he didn't even really think about what he was going to play ahead of time. He was all good. He was going in. He felt confident. And then the person about a couple minutes before he went on there, he said to him like, "Hey, give me that ding dong sound." And when the guy said that, he kind of went, "Wait, what do you think is the ding dong sound?" and he and he said it really kind of messed with him for about 20 minutes in the
oh,
beginning
I
of his
hate that.
set. Do you run into that sometimes, where like
Sometimes,
who is
yes.
Donald
Oh, yes,
who is
yes, it
Donald
does.
Knight right now? And
Yes, I have,
yeah,
and it's just because the fact is some sometimes, and it's a hard one, but that's usually why I don't show up until right before I play. Usually, it's because I don't want something or somebody to get in my head. Correct? Like if it could be a somebody just going to the show could say the wrong thing to me, and it can mess with me for 20, 30 minutes, right? Or or the DJ playing one of the songs I was going to play. You know
Right.
what I mean? That was a main song that I have to switch things up on, or whatever. And but sometimes it's good to know what the DJ played before you. So it's a hard one, right? But but I have had that happen, yes, to where it's something that's messed with me, and I've had to shake it off. So
Right.
yeah, it happens.
That's funny. That's funny you mentioned that because I guess in a similar way, I tend to not listen to very many other DJ mixes because I'm almost like I'd almost rather be blissfully unaware, and I'll discover songs how I discover them, and then
Right.
that'll get melded into my style, and I don't want to think about, oh man, I'm just playing 3 songs that DJ just played.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Same thing with me. I don't listen to a lot of other DJ. I do it, but not really. Actually, people laugh. I don't listen to many mix, at all.
Yeah,
It's usually for other
yeah.
people, like or
And
whatever.
then
But
there's the flip side where I was talking to Z Trip at Breakfast of Champions 2 years ago, and he was there hours early, and he was just hanging out backstage, and he just said it was important for him. Context was important, so he wanted to
right.
soak it
Yeah.
all in. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I'm
Exactly.
like,
And
I'm
and
like,
and and and
yeah,
that is and they're both important. I mean, and for example, the Joshua Tree thing I brought up, the 3 hour thing that I spoke about, where you start cold. So, I'll mention it again. Starting cold to me means there's no opening DJ, right? Nobody's setting you up. You set yourself up and you close the show, right? You're the whole thing. So, but there's a DJ I played on Saturday, another guy I played on Friday. I went to force myself to go, you hear me? And I did. I forced myself to go listen to him. He was good. Don't get me wrong. He was really good. I'm so happy I went, right? Because I felt I don't know this crowd at all, right? Does that make sense? Like,
yeah,
so I went there to see what this crowd was about, right? And what they did respond to that the DJ played, right? And what they didn't. Kind of see how kind of trying to see how where my boundaries were with that, kind of, right?
right,
Like
right,
just to kind of have like a general understanding of them. Because like if you go to the burn, I understand that crowd, right? Does that make
yeah,
sense? But
yeah,
so I understand these crowds. This Joshua Tree thing was kind of a hybrid mix of I imagined. So it's nice sometimes then, or like the first time you go to Love Burn or an event like that, or on cruise or whatever, to kind of see absorb what's going on, right?
yeah.
Does that make sense? So I understand why he was there for hours, especially when he doesn't really have to worry about other people playing his stuff, right?
Yeah.
I mean, in that kind of situation, correct? I mean, I would think that you would agree with me with that, right? Like his, we all know his style. He's the
Yeah.
shit, and
Yeah.
but him wanting to know what the crowd what to get the feel of the energy. I think that's really important sometimes. So you have
And
to gauge it, and it's a personal thing. So
yeah, and Joshua Tree, I went last year, I think. They do it twice a year, but yeah, it's a
yeah,
very
I
cool
did. But I
setup
played
because
November. You probably went when it was like
yeah,
the bigger one, right? Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
and it's very curated, and so yeah, it is interesting to be at a festival where it's not about music playing on every stage. It's more about
Yes, right.
we're curating this artist, and we kind of want to funnel people to check it out, even if it's maybe not your jam. Usually,
Yeah, I think that's uh, uh,
yeah,
that's what's
pretty cool.
that's what I kind of liked about that thing. I didn't know what to expect. I wanted to play, and it was like one of the things I on my list of things wanting to do that I didn't think I would ever get to do. And then they heard that I wanted to play, and it's all kind of worked out. And then now like they're great friends of mine. But but that my set on the next day on the Saturday. So I went to listen to this guy on Friday. He played amazing. Um, and it kind of showed me, oh, these guys know what's up, right? This crew knows what's up. I play on Saturday, and I'm in tears by the end of my set. It was like one of the best sets I've played in the last 10 years, and I had people like it was people were saying, and I don't like say this lightly, like I took them to church, for example. It was just It was, I went from like house, I went all over the place, dude. Like started funky, funky house, right? And then this started, and I ended up all dirty and hard, and then we were happy, and it was great.
What were you? Wait, you said you had some fears. What were you feeling? Was it just a satisfaction at that journey?
Well, I've been going, like I said, emotionally, I've been going through a lot, just trying to get my career back on track and having people believe in me and, and whatnot. And, and some other things happen. A lot of, I'll just say it, a lot of cock blocking and people getting in the way and me having to circumvent and me just, trying to, you know, keep the dream alive and believing in myself and, and then you want to show others. I don't know. It really reaffirmed that this can still happen for me. So
Oh,
that
that's
makes sense.
beautiful.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
And we're in the very home stretch now. Is there anything that you've been listening to recently, new or old, that you would like to that's moved you that you would like to mention?
Oh wow. I don't know. What has moved me, I think, is more of it's everything, all of it. So from the music that's coming out to the potential of the people that are going to these events and where this can go. I think it's exciting. It's not because it can make you nervous and excited, but it'd be nice to get some love and some old school plur back into it, and I see it. So
Yeah.
I it's good. It's not all the bottles and tables and shit, and so much anymore, and I think that's exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's I'm I love to see these events, like seeing you at Unscrews with the memoriam to Dan there, and playing a beautiful set, and doing the Pride Parade here. So I'd love to see somebody who's from my hometown kicking it and killing it. And much appreciated that you're on the podcast today.
Oh, I appreciate it. Thank you
That's
so
meant
much.
a lot.
And I'm about to re-up. And if you ever, I'll probably think of a few really crazy dance stories that I could tell you. But at the moment, I keep thinking about all the ones I shouldn't. So I'll just keep those.
Well,
So,
and I'll say this, and it's well, I know there's a lot of stories, and one of them that Dan had said to me before, about a month before he passed away, and
yeah.
we were on the phone, and he just said, Keith, he goes, when I
Oh,
retire.
I got one. I got it.
Okay,
Can I tell you?
hit me.
Okay. So Dad brought it up and I forgot about it. And it was years ago, and it was a funky techno tri party, had to have been, and or something like that. And it was me and Dan and 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 Hopkins, right? The and Jim and and I guess I was like, I was still playing records, and I guess we're all together, and I'm just talking shit like I do or whatever, and then I opened my and I opened my record box. It was an actual record box with records in it, people, and and there's like two old hot dogs in it. My kids, my kids were like trying to put me in my place, and they, oh, Dad, you think you're so cool? They put two hot dogs in my like old ones in my fucking record box. It's so embarrassing. I forgot. I just photoshopped that out of my shit. Like I forgot all about it. Dan brought that up, and I was like, oh my god, no way. I forgot all about that. So, they laughed at my ass so hard. It's fucking
That's
kids.
awesome.
It is awesome. Okay, go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I would have forgot about that.
Oh God, that's funny. I think that's the first time I can remember hearing a kid related DJ story like that.
Yes.
Um, so Dan had said, and so I appreciate this because you know, as I mentioned, this podcast, one of the things that it does, along with talking about your own journey, is it helps create an oral history of this dance music scene.
Yeah.
And those stories, so Dan had said, "Hey, Keith, he goes, there's stories I can't tell you because I'm still a DJ. Because, you know, when
Yeah.
I retire,"
Yeah.
he goes,
Yeah.
"When I retire," he said, "you're going to come to my house, bring your microphone, and we're going to record all these stories." And,
Yeah. I'll let
and
them
so
all out. Yeah. Exactly.
so instead of it having to go through Dan now, it's going to have to be through people like yourself and
Me and other people selectively.
Doc
Yes.
and the Funky Techno Tribe guys. So,
Yeah.
so with that, so my very last question to you, and you were a nominee from Dan about being on the pod. If you could if you could nominate and maybe help me get someone else onto the pod, who would it be?
Yeah. Simply Jeff.
Simply Jeff. All right.
Yeah.
All right.
Or
All right. Well,
Charles.
if you
Charles
Charles,
good. Yeah.
just I don't know if I know Charles.
Yeah.
All right.
Well,
Well,
Baltimore, you would get a different perspective. That'd be good.
all right. I'll follow up with you because yeah, I'm very curious and I'd love to getting the stories into the pod.
Yeah. Perfect. Well,
All right.
thank you so much. I appreciate it.
All right. Thank you, Donald. It's been a pleasure.
All right. We'll talk soon. Take it easy. Peace.